The crown of Sweden is a circle of gold, inlaid with pearls and sapphires, but for the man who wore it in the year 1560, it felt more like a band of iron, tightening with every passing day, slowly crushing the mind it was meant to adorn. That man was Erik XIV, a king who possessed everything a Renaissance prince could desire: a brilliant intellect, a mastery of 7 languages, a gift for music and art, and a vision for a powerful, modern Sweden. Yet, he was a king who would be remembered not for his brilliance but for his madness, not for his life but for his friendship with a corpse. This is a story of a mind unraveling in the cold, dark halls of Uppsala Castle, a tale where paranoia curdled into murder, and guilt manifested in the most macabre vigil history has ever recorded. He was born to greatness, the son of the formidable Gustav Vasa, the man who had freed Sweden from the Danes. From his father, Erik inherited a kingdom. From his mother, who died in a suspected poisoning, he may have inherited a deep-seated fear and a fragile nervous system. He was a scholar king, drafting elaborate plans for a new legal system, corresponding with the great minds of Europe, and gazing at the stars, believing his destiny was written in their celestial paths. But the same mind that could compose a complex fugue was also a fertile ground for suspicion. He saw plots in every shadow, treason in every whispered conversation. The powerful Swedish nobility, with their ancient names and vast lands, became the focus of his dread. In his eyes they were not loyal subjects but rivals, vipers coiled around his throne. And the most dangerous vipers of all, he became convinced, were the Sture family. They had royal blood in their veins, and Erik, who lacked a legitimate heir, saw in their every action a design to usurp him. Feeding this paranoia was a man named Göran Persson, a commoner of low birth but towering ambition who had become the king's closest advisor. Persson was the whisper in the king's ear, the voice that confirmed his darkest fears. He fed the king's suspicion of the Sture family, painting them as the architects of a vast conspiracy. And the king, isolated in his gilded cage, listened. The architecture of his own mind was turning against him, and Göran Persson was the architect of its ruin. The stage was set for a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions, but the final bloody act would be driven by a madness all its own. The trigger was pulled not by an assassin but by a wedding. Erik's own half-brother, John, Duke of Finland, defied the king's direct order and married Catherine Jagiellon, a Polish princess. This was not merely an act of disobedience. To Erik's fevered mind, it was a declaration of war, an alliance meant to bolster John's own claim to the throne. Enraged, Erik marched his army to John's castle at Abo, besieged it, and captured his brother and new sister-in-law, throwing them into the grim fortress of Gripsholm. The act sent a shockwave through the nobility. If the king would do this to his own brother, what would he do to them? The Sture family, already under suspicion, were now seen as the leaders of the silent opposition. The king's paranoia, once a smoldering ember, was now a raging fire. And so, we come to the fateful days of May 1567. The air in Uppsala Castle was thick with fear. The king had not slept. He paced his chambers, his eyes wild, his mind a cauldron of imagined betrayals. He saw the face of Svante Sture, the patriarch, and his sons Nils and Erik in every dream, heard their laughter as a mockery of his rule. The celestial charts he so revered showed only ominous signs. On May 24th, the dam of his sanity broke. In a fit of uncontrollable rage and terror, he gave the order. His guards moved through the castle's dungeons with cold efficiency. 5 members of the high nobility were dragged from their cells and executed in a bloody purge that would become known as the Sture murders. But for one man, death was not to be so impersonal. Nils Sture was young, handsome, and had once been a companion to the king. He was a friend, or had been, in a life that now seemed a world away. When the king learned Nils was among the prisoners, something snapped. He did not leave his fate to the guards. He descended into the dungeon himself, a dagger in his hand. He found Nils, and in a scene of horrific, intimate violence, the King of Sweden stabbed his former friend to death. The act was one of supreme fury but also of supreme fear, the destruction of something he once cherished because he could no longer understand it. The moment the deed was done, a strange clarity pierced the fog of his madness. The rage evaporated, leaving only a hollow, terrifying emptiness. He looked down at the body of the young man at his feet, at the blood on his own hands, and the reality of what he had done crashed down upon him. He staggered back, turned and fled. He fled the castle, fled the city, and vanished into the deep forests of Uppland. For 3 days the King of Sweden was missing. He was found wandering, disoriented and disheveled, disguised in the rough clothes of a peasant. The crown was gone, the regal bearing was gone. All that remained was a broken man haunted by the ghosts he had himself created. But the true descent into the bizarre was just beginning. Returned to the castle, racked with a guilt so profound it defied expression, Erik XIV issued his most chilling command. He ordered that the body of Nils Sture be exhumed. It was to be washed, perfumed, and dressed not in a shroud, but in the finest silks and velvets. The corpse was then laid upon a bed of state in the royal chambers, surrounded by candles as if in a wake. And then the king began his vigil. He would sit for hours beside the body of the man he had murdered. He would speak to it in low, pleading tones. He would stroke its cold hair, adjust its clothing, and weep bitter tears. He asked for forgiveness, he confessed his fears, he carried on a one-sided conversation with the silent, decaying friend. The court looked on in horror. This was not the act of a tyrant, but of a mind so shattered that it could only seek absolution from the one person who could no longer judge it, the victim. It was a grotesque pantomime of friendship, a testament to a loneliness so absolute that only the dead could be trusted as confidants. 4 days the king held court with a corpse, a living monarch ruling over a kingdom of one, his only subject a body slowly succumbing to decay. This macabre interlude could not last. The political repercussions of the murders were seismic. The Swedish nobility, terrified that they would be next, finally united against him. His brothers John and Charles saw their chance. In the autumn of 1568, they led a successful rebellion. Erik was captured, deposed, and imprisoned. His beloved commoner wife, Karin Mansdotter, and their children were imprisoned with him, a final heartbreaking separation from the world he had lost. For nearly 9 years he was moved from one fortress to another, a ghost of his former self, a living reminder of the terror of his reign. He spent his days writing, drafting elaborate plans for his restoration, his mind still dancing between lucidity and delusion. His existence was an ongoing threat to the new king, his brother John III. A living deposed king is a rallying point for rebellion. And so, in 1577, in the dark, damp confines of Uppsala Castle, the final act of this tragedy was played out. A bowl of pea soup was brought to the former king. It was laced with arsenic. He ate it and the poison did its work. Erik XIV, the scholar, the musician, the madman, the murderer, the king who conversed with the dead, was dead himself. His story is a chilling reminder that the human mind, even one encased in gold and power, is a fragile vessel. And when it breaks, the consequences can echo through the halls of history, leaving behind stories so strange, so dark, and so profoundly sad that they forever walk the line between history and nightmare. The crown he wore now sits in a museum, a beautiful, cold object. But if you look closely, you might still see the shadow of the man who wore it, and the ghost of the friend he could not bear to lose, a silent, eternal testament to the day a king tried to find solace in the arms of the dead.